Welcome everybody again to Friday Noon, Relentless Learning. I'm your host, Larry Apke. I appreciate you folks who've shown up for this now our third of the Relentless Learnings. I'm going to just briefly present a little bit about what this is about for folks who may not have been here before. So, Relentless Learning, sponsored by the VUCA MBA, and I'll explain a little bit about what the VUCA MBA is for those who don't know. What we do every week at noon, Pacific, that is we talk about two big ideas. We have a guest that joins us every week, and my guest this week is Kyle Aretae. I've just noticed that I actually spelled his name wrong. Apologize to Kyle. I missed a letter on there. Copy and paste problems. He's going to talk about something that's called the path to hours, where path means please and thanks. This is something that I've known Kyle for years, and something that he's presented before, and I'm fairly familiar with, and certainly a big idea, and certainly something worth listening to. So I'm looking forward to that, and certainly looking forward to bringing him on here in a little bit. But first, I'm going to present on my what I consider my big idea, which is why sequence means value. I could probably came up with everything. I'm going to talk about sequence today, and I'm going to talk about why sequence, at least in my mind, is important, and something that we don't necessarily always talk about in the world of agility and business. So I think it's a key, and I think it's a big idea. So hopefully I'll convince you of that in a little bit. Just to give you an idea of next week, my guest is Charlie Triplett. Charlie, I've had the good fortune of most of my guests of working with them, being familiar with what they do. Charlie has recently written a book on accessibility. He knows a lot about accessibility, and he is going to present his big idea next week at this time. Digital accessibility is a key to unlocking innovation every time. And I'm really looking forward to that, just as I'm looking forward to Kyle. First, a little word from our sponsors. The sponsor is actually me and my company, which is the VUCA MBA. What is the VUCA MBA? For those who are not familiar with the term VUCA, that really stands for these four words: volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. This is a term that came to us actually from the military some years ago, but it's a way of describing how the world is. And I would venture to say that if anybody looks around at the world in the state that we're in, and looks just even into maybe the last 10 years, I think we're all realizing that the world is continuing to become more, as you were, VUCA. And so because of that, what we need to know is, how do we actually survive and thrive in this world? And from my standpoint, the way that we survive and thrive in this VUCA world is that we understand what I would call the mindset for business agility. And that's what the MBA portion of the VUCA MBA stands for, just for those people who want to know. I believe that having this thing that I refer to as an agile mindset is really important in understanding how we can get better in this VUCA world. Just briefly, a little bit more exciting news, at least from my side of things, is this book. It's a really tiny little book, so I don't want people to get too excited or too impressed by it. But it is a book that I think really can help folks. And Kyle has written some books too, and he'd be the first to tell you, we don't make a lot of money selling agile books. I don't think anyone does. But I put it out there as an ebook. I think it's really important. The ideas I've talked about so far, my big ideas, are things that are in this book. And the big idea I'm going to talk about today is actually in this book. So I encourage you all to take a look if it's something that you're interested in. Not because, again, I'm going to make a lot of money out of selling books, but because I think it's helpful for a lot of people to understand what I'm referring to as the golden rule of agile. I titled it Apke's Golden Rule of Agile because I wanted folks to know that this is just my thinking. There isn't a golden rule of Agile, and it's not something that I want people to think that there's a single golden rule. Anyway, in the comments section of LinkedIn and here for posterity, there's a bunch of different links for you all that you might find helpful. So I encourage you, if you want to reach out to me, you want to know more about the VUCA MBA, there's all kinds of different ways you can do so. I also want to put in, you can put on my calendar time. You want a half-hour Zoom chat, you have something that you want to talk about. I'm very excited about agility and Agile. I'll talk to anyone about that, as my friend Kyle knows. And I have a YouTube channel, and in that channel, there's a lot of the training that I've done over the years. So this is something that individuals can access for free. The VUCA MBA is something that we sell to businesses and organizations, but those individuals who believe that they can benefit can probably benefit quite a bit, even from the YouTube. So that's the VUCA MBA. I want to slightly change now and segue into my big idea for the day. So this, again, is a presentation that I've put together. And I want to go back to what I'm calling AppKey's golden rule of Agile. Again, it's not the golden rule of Agile. It's my perception of it. I believe if I were to take a lot of what's in agility, if I'm going to take what's in the values and the principles of the Agile Manifesto, it boils down to this. And it's not just this, but this is a big part of it. And it's helpful. That's the reason that I use this, not because it's complete, not because it's exhaustive, but I found it to be very helpful. And here is the golden rule of Agile, is that we deliver the optimal value to our customers in the shortest time possible. And if we take this, and here's what I think is the utility of this. If we take this statement and say, there's a lot here. It's not everything, but there's a lot here. And we unpack that statement. We really need to know three things in order to satisfy this rule. And those three things are, we need to know our customers' needs. We need to know the value of delivering an item, a thing, a feature, whatever it may be, to our customer. What is the value of doing that? Not only to the customer, but also to our organization, because companies are for profit and we're out there to make money. And unless you're a nonprofit, that's a different story. But a for-profit company, what is the goal? Well, Goldratt tells us it's to make a profit now and in the future. So it has to, most of the time, doing things for our customer that bring value to us as a company, because we get more customers. The third thing we need to know is we need to know something about the time, effort, expense, etc., of what does it take to deliver those things. Now, most of what I talk about, I think, is more applicable to what I will consider knowledge work, and knowledge work tends to be mostly labor intensive. So this might be different in a manufacturing environment. I'm talking mostly about those things, and obviously, like a lot of people, I cut my teeth on software development, and I've applied it to software development, which is knowledge work. So how much effort, how much time does it take to deliver those things? Because that speaks to something called cost of delay. We covered that last week. I covered again because what we did last time is we did an exercise on relative value and effort. For those of you who were with us, if you weren't with us, I encourage you to go look at the previous ones. They should be easy to find, and you can see that thing. And what we can do is, once we have relative value and effort, we can get a ratio of value to effort. And I do this in a spreadsheet, and I do it quite frequently with clients. I think I did it just yesterday. If we do that, we can sort by the things that have the highest value and the lowest effort. Because mathematically, we're assuming our estimates are correct, which obviously is problematic, but we have to start somewhere. So just mathematically, if our estimates are correct, we deliver the most value in the shortest period of time. It's not because I want it to be, it's mathematical. And I refer to this exercise of getting the value and effort and then sequencing it by the value, the highest value to the lowest effort. I call that the ideal sequence. And it looks something like this. This is what I use in my training. It's what I have in my book. This is a honey-do list. This is a whole bunch of things that you can do as far as home improvement. This is the list. This was done by a class many, many years ago, and I've just used it. I put it into a spreadsheet. You can see that each one of these items in the backlog, whether we want to call them stories, features, epics, OKRs, I really don't care what we call them. I just call them product backlog items. Each one of them has a notion of relative value and relative effort, and you can see that we've sequenced by that ratio in that final column. And again, mathematically, if we were to do this, we would deliver the most value in the shortest amount of time. However, we do not live in the ideal world. We live in the real world. At least I think most of us do. If you live in the ideal world, send me a note. I want to join you. I don't know where it is. We live in a world of constraints, and those constraints can be all kinds of things. Those constraints can be dependencies. They can be temporal, like if I need to deliver something by Black Friday because of Christmas, that's a temporal constraint. I can have legal constraints. There's systemic constraints in terms of I've got to do, a dependency. I got to do one thing before another. I think I mentioned that earlier. So what we need to do next is we need to resequence it. We take the ideal sequence and say, this is what we would love to do if we had no constraints. And then we sit down as a team, generally speaking, and we talk about the constraints. And then we resequence the work. This would be an example, again, one I use in my training, and it's one that's in my book, of where would we resequence things? And why would we do so? And what does the value and effort ratio look like? What does the sequence look like? And in this particular instance, I don't know how well you can see it, but you'll notice, or I can read it out to you, we have something called Rewire the Arizona Room, which has been moved up to the top. And the reason that that's moved up to the top is that we also have another item called Insulate the Arizona Room. And I'm not a fancy electrician or handyman at all. You can ask Jana, my wife Jana, she'll tell you that. I'm just not very handy around the house, but I know this. I do not want to insulate the Arizona room first before I rewire it. So I change the sequence so that rewire is above. If I want to get to insulate, rewire is above insulate, because insulate was the first thing that I might do. So I've slightly resequenced this work so that it takes into account the constraints. And what I'm left with, and this is the big idea, and there's more things that I can talk about with this, but I do see that I'm running out of time, and I just want to try to keep it to at least just one big idea, so that we have time for everything today. Is what we have created is we've created it's a backlog, but maybe better to think of it as a sequence of delivery. And that sequence of delivery will, by definition, ensure that the most value is delivered over time, given our constraints. And it is that sequence of events that will satisfy this thing that I refer to as the golden rule, which is we deliver the optimal value in the shortest possible time. Because the shortest possible time, when I put the word possible in there, is because what we want to do is we want to live in the world that's real, the world of the possible. And we don't do that just by delivering the ideal sequence. We do it by factoring in the constraints and making sure that we're delivering the best sequence we can to deliver the most value in the shortest amount of time. Very simple idea, very simple technique, I believe, something that a lot of people can get benefit of. So that's my big idea for the day. I want to move now and welcome my guest this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. Kyle, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I am doing wonderfully. I'm doing better that you're here. Kyle and I want to do a little intro for Kyle, because Kyle and I have worked together a couple times over our careers, and we probably wanted to work together, at least in my case. I wanted to work with Kyle many times. We just didn't have the opportunity, but we recently did, and that was a very big pleasure in my life that I got that opportunity. Kyle and I, when we started out, it's been, and you have to remind me because I'm not really good with time, but I think it's been over 10 years.
2012.
2012. Okay, so over 10 years that we met. We were working on the same gig. It was actually one of my first true coaching gigs. It was the first job that I had where I had the Agile coach title. Kyle, I think, had been doing it for some time before that, and I met Kyle on that engagement, and I was incredibly impressed with his ability, and I don't say that lightly, and I think he understands that. He is much more than this, and I don't want him to get mad at me, but he is probably the best technical Agile coach as a specialty. And obviously he's an excellent Agile coach for other things, but not as many of us are as technical as Kyle is. And the other thing that I would want to say about Kyle, other than he's a good friend, is that he always challenges me, and not in a bad way. He has a very extensive reading list, and we talk a lot about books. And what I find is that Kyle's the books that Kyle reads to get to where he is and his understanding and practice is different than mine. And the ones that he's given me to read, for the most part, I'm like blown away. We've both gotten, I think, to the same or very similar destination through very different means, as far as at least reading is concerned. So I love the fact that he challenges me in a good way all the time to make me a better coach. And I would say when I'm a better coach, I hope that I'm also a better person for that interaction. So I don't know what else I can say as far as superlatives, Kyle. I know what you're going to talk about today, and I know that the folks are going to be blown away. But we got a few minutes. What did I miss? Or here's the fun part. You have the opportunity for a shameless plug for whatever audience we have out there today. Either or both. Anything you'd like to say before you go into your presentation this morning?
Putting me on the spot here. I'm not very good at shameless plugs. Thank you very much for having me here. I'm currently pursuing a new idea. My thing is simplification. I want things to be simpler, not more complicated. Details about, like, I love what you just did a few minutes ago. Hey, you know what we do? We want to do important stuff that's easy to do first.
Right.
Good. That's it. That's the idea. And all of the other stuff about estimation and ordering is mostly an expansion of that idea. It's not a different idea. It's just this one little idea. And how do we work with that idea? One clear goal, bunch of details that we can talk about later.
Super.
I love that approach.
Yeah, I do too. I think we've probably talked about this before, and maybe we'll talk about it after your thing. But one of the things that I've talked about, and I might have gotten it from you, because half the time I don't know what I steal from you or steal from somebody else. But I think that really one of the big keys is simplicity relentlessly applied. I love that term, relentless, actually, because we really have to be disciplined, and keeping things simple takes a lot of discipline. But if you won't do the shameless plug, I'm going to do at least one shameless plug for you. And that is, I gave the plug for my book. I know that, again, Kyle's written some books in the past. I believe that the one that you have, The Scrum Princess, can you talk just briefly about that book? Because I think there's an interesting story behind that book.
So, sure. The Scrum Princess is a book that I wrote with my wife because I started trying to explain Scrum to folks, and I found out that there's a lot of ideas that come up where if you just talk about them, people have this approach where if you say, I know what we're going to do iterations. then everybody goes, oh, iteration, what's that mean? Well, I know how to build software. I'm going to get some requirements, and then I'm going to do some design, and then I'm going to build some code. And so when you say iteration, I'm going to take your word iteration and map it into stuff I already understand. Mm-hmm. Which means that a lot of communication fails pretty badly, because sometimes I'm not saying something that you already understand. I'm trying to say something new. And so I wrestled for a while on how to figure out how to share an idea that might be new. And as I thought through ways people had done it in the past, I figured out that fairy tales were a great approach. You take a fairy tale, and you can sometimes present an idea in a fairy tale. And if you repeat it, or you get used to the story, or the story is close to something you already know, then maybe you see the new idea as you paint the picture. Mm-hmm. So instead of telling Scrum as a do this step, do this step, do this step, I wrote Scrum as a fairy tale. And my wife, I started telling Scrum as a fairy tale, as a story. And my wife said, that's a pretty good story, but it could be an even better children's book. And so,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's a wonderful book, and it's a great story because you got to work on it with your wife. And did she remind me? Did she do the illustrations, or did somebody in your family do
it? She got the illustration set up. We had a back and forth. I was fighting for precision. She was fighting for good story. We had all sorts of wrestling, kind of like you and I argue. And I'm very happy with the results of what came out. I don't happen to have the a great picture of it here, but
it's hard to see
on the background, so I can't show it. I have a French version in my hand.
Okay, well, that's fine. One of the things that we can do is I'll put it in the comments here while you're doing your presentation for people who are interested. I'm sure I can find it. Where would they? Sorry to go too much into this, but where would they buy it? Where would they find it? Is it on Amazon?
I was trying to get to comments, and I guess I failed.
Oops. Llewellyn Falco put it up in the comments, but I lost Kyle for a second. So we're going to have to get Kyle back. I do want to say, while we're waiting for him to reconnect, there's probably some problems on his side. Here he comes. He's back. It's okay.
I tried to push the button to say I can log in to do comments, and I failed.
It'll log you out. I probably should have told you. Good news is we have our good friend Llewellyn Falco who put in a link to it. So without further ado, I want to move into your big idea. So if you can do me a favor, you're going to have to re-upload that into the stream. There you go. I'm going to bring that up to the stage. If you need me to move the slides, forward the slides, I'm happy to do so. I'm going to jump out of your way here shortly. So take it away, Kyle.
Thank you. No, it looks like I can push the buttons. We'll see. I have one big idea that I'm pushing these days. I don't know that it's especially different than what a whole lot of experts know already, but I don't know that it's been simplified enough. So I'm chasing, trying to make the idea simpler. I'm calling it the path. I'm actually debating what the name of calling it is. I'm calling it the path. I'm calling it the soul of software. Let's go ahead and move into it. Here's the basic idea. Some organizations are actually dinosaurs. Here's the problem. Dinosaurs were very, very successful animals for 200 million years. Humans have been moderately successful animals for working on 1 million. Dinosaurs were exceptionally good as an approach to solving the problem of how to keep surviving. Dinosaurs have lots of characteristics. Generally, they are big, They are fat, they're happy, they stomp anything that gets in their way. They have a brain the size of a walnut. They don't actually need to learn very much. What they need to do is keep chewing, right? Take their step, do their thing. There are some organizations which are successful dinosaurs. And those organizations have as a strategy, stomp on stuff in their way and don't bother learning much. It's a working strategy. At least it's a working strategy until a meteor shows up. But it is a working strategy. Meteors were pretty rare. I think the cycle time on a meteor was 60 or 70 million years. If we're not a dinosaur, the rest of us need to do some adaptation in order to survive. And adaptation, well, adaptation's a really simple question. How fast do you learn? Or what's your speed of learning? There's really two choices for most circumstances. You either learn what's going on in your environment, you adapt to it, and you survive and then you thrive by learning more, or you don't learn, you don't adapt, and you don't survive. It's a pretty simple choice. I'm not saying all organizations need to learn and adapt. I am saying many or most organizations need to learn and adapt, and that there's going to be a huge amount of effort that we need to devote to that direction. So, speed of learning. How does an organization learn? Well, organizations learn pretty much the same way that artillery learns how to hit its target. Guess what we should aim at to hit something, and then you shoot. You aim at a specific target, you do whatever it is you need to do to send something to hit that target, and you observe how far away you were from the actual target. And once you learn how much you missed by, then you re-aim and you fire again. The key thing here is, if you're not a dinosaur who just stomps on their problems, then what you're doing is you're aiming at your target. You are almost certainly not hitting your target perfectly. And then you are adjusting your aim and trying again. This is the business of organizational learning. But remember, we started talking and we were talking about speed of learning, right? The speed of what learning? Well, the way I tend to talk about it first, this is not the only topic in learning, but it's probably the one that is easiest to talk about. It's the one that is most convincing to people who are trying to decide whether to approach speed of learning. The question is, what's your please and thanks time? What does the customer really need? The way you check what the customer really needs is the customer says, please, I have a problem, can we solve it? The organization and the customer do some amount of guessing with some amount of togetherness, and then the organization delivers a solution to a customer problem. If you like opportunity better, that's fine. I don't care. You deliver a solution to the problem, and then the customer says, thanks, that solved my problem. The primary cycle time that matters is the please and thanks cycle time. It matters because if you can't do that cycle time very well, you can't learn very well how we are wrong. I'm moderately famous in the Agile community for using the words "we're wrong" a lot, way too much. However, recently I've heard that Elon Musk says the same thing in his 5 steps to build stuff. He says, look, the requirements are always going to be wrong. So the first thing you do is you go find out how wrong the requirements are. We need to know the please and thank you cycle. What's it take to go from please to thank you, so that we can find out where we were wrong and get better, so that we can do the adaptation. And so, are there other cycles that matter besides the entire cycle from please to thanks? Yeah, absolutely. The cycle time from I built something to does it work is an important thing. And that's a cycle that's smaller than I built something and does the customer like it. The biggest cycle, or the main big cycle, is please and thanks. If you wanted to extend that and say, I want from please to feedback, that would also be a good cycle, but it doesn't make a cute acronym like PATH. Now, the interesting thing that I've run into recently and that I'm excited about is the please and thanks cycle time can basically be understood by means of really one question. And that question is, what time unit do you use to measure please and thanks? Are you building a space shuttle where your please and thanks cycle is measured in decades? Are you building a large, doing the design for the next large Boeing aircraft and your cycle time is measured in years? Are you doing this in quarters? Are you using months, weeks, days, hours? Those are all different. And so my biggest insight recently, as I've been looking at this, is when you're asking please and thanks, when you're saying, what's your cycle there? If you can tell me what time units you use to measure your time scale, I can tell you probably most of the benefits you're getting from doing the work, most of the ways that will make you do the work better. If you are doing software in decades or years or quarters, then having a powerful technique where you have seniors do code reviews is a fairly powerful way to control whether you get good software into your real code base. If you're trying to do software on weeks or days or hours, code review is an atrocious practice that will do nothing but slow you down. If you're doing software on time scales like quarters or larger, then you have a great ability to let the business make long-lasting plans that say, hey, next quarter and next year, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to make plans around that. If you're making decisions on weeks or days of customer has an idea, and then they receive working software that they can use the next day or the next week, then the long-term planning scales stop being as effective because you have learned too much in short cycles. The inputs that make work in years are different than the inputs that make software work well in weeks. And those are different than the inputs that make software work well in hours. The benefits you get from quarters are different than the benefits you get from doing work in weeks, which are different than the benefits you get doing work in hours. The key insight I've had recently is if you talk about what time scale you are trying to solve problems in, then you pretty much know everything else about A, how to do it well, and B, what kind of results you should expect. Is that the only thing going on? No, there's going to be other cycles, but that's the main thing going on. And that's my insight.
I figure you did really good on time. So that's why I put you up here and then I put me up here. Hey, listen, I really appreciate that. As I'm listening to this, I've heard this before. It's interesting because we have different ways of talking about the same thing. When I talk about value and effort and sequence, it's kind of the same thing. We got to get this stuff out here. We got to get the valuable stuff out here for our customers, right? And so there's similarities there, and I think that's kind of the beauty of different coaches and different techniques is to see, because some people explain it differently and some people react to it differently. So great as always. We have about 10 minutes or so left, and normally what we do is we take some questions from the folks who are here, and the best way you can put your questions in is to post them in the comments. And I'm looking in the comments right now. I don't see any questions. So you were talking before we broke up about the Scrum Princess, and I kind of cut you off. I didn't know if there's anything else you wanted to say about that.
I dropped into the private chat the link, but I don't know how to get to the comments without getting lost again.
No, it's okay. Llewellyn Falco actually found the book and put the link in there for you.
Well, Llewellyn's awesome.
Yeah, Llewellyn is awesome. In fact, Llewellyn will be hopefully a guest if I can convince him to join us. Will be a guest here one of these weeks as well. Talk to me about, this is one of the big ideas that's been kind of perplexing you lately. We talked a lot about reading books, and I think a lot of times people are interested in reading books. So my question, while I'm waiting for questions from others, and I'll take them in the order I receive them if we get any, is what are you reading now? Or what have you read, I guess, recently, if you're not reading something currently that you think is worthy of telling other folks about?
So the most recent stuff I've been reading on the Agile front, and I'm going to pull up my Kindle so that I have the titles right. The most recent stuff I have been reading that is Agile relevant are topics around OKRs. There's a bunch of OKR books that are out that I have been enjoying.
Is there one in particular, Kyle, that you would recommend?
So far, I think I like Radical Focus better than I like Measure What Matters in terms of OKR books. Again, it's heavily focused on similar ideas to parts of agility. You know what we want to do? We want to declare a goal first, and then allow variation in the steps we take to get there, and measure how well we're doing on achieving the goal. One of the big problems we have with Agile adoptions, with people trying to do parts of Agile, is they go, I know what we're going to do. We're going to have a stand-up every day.
Yep.
And nobody checks why we're having a stand-up or whether the stand-up is achieving what goal the stand-up is trying to achieve. And so they treat the stand-up poorly, and they end up with hour-long stand-ups that are no different than anything they did before, except they waste more time and have them more often. So that doesn't achieve stand-up goals. What you want to do is you want to say, hey, what I want to do is have an effective method for a team to coordinate.
Yeah.
Right? And so you use the stand-up for that. Or you say, I want a 5-minute way for the leader to understand what's going on with the team. Or use the stand-up for whatever you want it to, but be super clear about why you're doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And then use a tool to solve a problem. Don't just use a tool because somebody's told you to.
Right. Well, these are conversations you and I have had, and other coaches that we've worked with. We just recently worked as a group of some of the best coaches around and that you can find. You know, we got very lucky to work with that group. We had these discussions quite frequently. One of the things you're alluding to, I want to ask another question because I'm still not seeing any come up in comments, which is fine. Is there's this almost, I want to say, I'm looking for the right word here. There's a lot of angst, I think, in what I'm going to refer to as the Agile community. I think you and I both are very active on LinkedIn. We're very plugged into what I'm going to refer to, for lack of a better word, is the Agile community. There seems to be a lot of angst there, and I want to get your take on it. But somebody asked me the other day, just to put it in perspective, why are you making this VUCA brand? You're an Agile coach. You've been an Agile coach for years. Why do you use it? Well, I've started to, and it took me a long time to convince me of this, and you might have been one of the ones who did. This word Agile has kind of lost some of its meaning, and there's a lot of angst in the community. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say the same thing I usually say. Agile started, it was built out of the OO community, and there is one continuous thread that started in the object-oriented analysis and design community in the early 80s. And that same thread ran through the 80s into the patterns movement, into the early lightweight software methods, and into Agile. And it made it all the way to about 2005 as one continuous, unbroken, how do you build software better, with a lot of the same people involved from 1980 to 2005. And then in 2005, Scrum started offering certifications. And the small group of people who were interested in building software better, and maybe there were 500 of us, maybe there were 1,000 of us. There are more than 500,000 people certified in a 2-day Agile course now.
Is that all?
I don't know. It might be
the numbers were higher,
sneaking up towards 1 million. But here's the question. What's the ratio there between the people who had been trying to build software better by lots of experience and hands-on tinkering with software and running software projects themselves versus a bunch of certifications that started coming out, and people would get a 2-day certification and people would stop hiring people without 2-day certifications, even if they were some of the people with 25 years of experience in doing software. Somewhere around 2005, the momentum shifted. By 2010, 12, certifications had taken priority over successful software. And Scrum was leading, and then SAFe came in and did it even better. And
by better, you mean the certification business?
Yes, the certification business in SAFe is insanely effective. And so what you have is two groups. There's the Scrum-ish certifications, whether that be Scrum Alliance or Scrum.org or the PMI, and there's the SAFe certifications. And those have taken over for how do you build software well. And my impression is that the movement has become one of certifications instead of one of effectiveness at this point. And so I'm bearish on Agile at the moment.
And I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. I think I had this conversation maybe with Tom Malash, who was on our guest a couple of weeks ago. I think when your financial model is around certification, I think you lose the essence of what it's all about. And there's a lot of us, and there's a lot of folks who it doesn't cause any problems for, I guess, but there's a lot of us who it does cause some heartburn for.
Did I lose you?
No, well, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, we're back. We're here. But anyways, I think you lose some of the agility behind Agile. I think Agile really is practical, even though, gosh, I teach a class called Mindset, which sounds very theoretical, but I think it's really the practical application of the mindset. And I don't think that these courses are either about enough about the mindset, nor the practicality of how do we actually do something. I don't make money in SAFE by being successful. I make money by selling certifications that you understand what I've taught you. And I think those things are fundamentally different. And anyway, I'm looking at the time. Could talk with you all day. We're running a little long. We can do that though, because it is LinkedIn Live, and I don't think they're going to shut us down until we do it. But I want to respect people's time. I'm going to give you a few moments for any last thoughts and ideas. We've got a small audience here, but a mighty audience. What would you like to tell folks? Things on your mind?
I just want to go back to what I was talking about earlier. Take super seriously what time units you're measuring your cycles in, because what it takes to do a cycle in an hour. Hey, Larry, I've got an idea, and deliver something to the customer an hour later. That's a very different kind of agility than one in which you say, hey, for the first quarter, we're going to decide our requirements, and in the second quarter, we're going to deliver software.
Perfect. We're gonna leave it with that. I thank you for being here and having this discussion. I thank you for being a challenge to me in a good way, a mentor and a friend over the years. Again, thank you for being here. And I hope for the folks who were here today, if you get value out of it, please keep coming. If you get value out of it, please encourage others to join us. It happens every Friday at noon. We cover two big ideas. I think Kyle's idea is a big idea, which is path. What is the time that
please
it takes?
And thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much.